Kumarji, Special Secretary, Economic Relations and Development Partnership Administration, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. We are ready to go ahead with the proceedings of our next session, which is on enhancing India's global trade and space sector, a roundtable discussion. And I have the proud privilege in inviting on stage our distinguished chair and special guest, Shri Prabhat Kumarji. May I invite you, sir, to kindly grace the stage with your presence. I will request Dr. Subba Pavuluri to kindly escort our special guest onto the stage, please. I also have the privilege in inviting our eminent panelists, Shri Mahaveer Singhvi, Joint Secretary, New Emerging and Strategic Technologies Division. I would like to invite Mr. Laxmesh BH, Vice President and Head, Missiles and Aerospace Business, L&T Defense. A warm welcome. I invite Mr. Ananth Singh, Assistant Vice President in West India. I invite Ms. R. Anitha Nanduni, Director ICN Policy. I invite Captain Vishal Kanwar, Executive Director PwC India, warm welcome. Captain Vinod Narasimhamurthy, Retired Associate Director BCG. May I invite Mr. Rohan Verma, CEO and ED, MapmyIndia. Warm welcome to you, sir. Namaskar and good evening. Distinguished Chair, Shri Prabhat Kumarji, Special Secretary, Economic Relations and Development Partnership Administration, Ministry of External Affairs, MEA, Government of India. Eminent panelists on the stage, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the special session on enhancing India's global trade in space sector, a roundtable discussion. Through proactive engagement, MEA strengthens India's position as a reliable partner in the global space sector, opening doors for expanded trade opportunities and collaborations with countries around the world. By effectively leveraging strategic tools such as financing, India can unleash the full potential of India's space sector and fuel its global competitiveness. We begin the session by welcoming Shri Prabhat Kumarji. I would request Dr. Subba to kindly do the honors of presenting a shawl and a bouquet and welcoming and honoring our special guest, Shri Prabhat Kumarji. A very warm welcome to you, sir. May I also invite Professor Chaitanya Giri to kindly join us on the stage, please. Thank you. Kindly take your seat, sir. I would now request Mr. Anil Prakash, Director General SIA-INDIA, to kindly give the opening remarks of this session.
Well, indeed, very thankful to our honored guest this evening, Prabhat Kumarji, Special Secretary MIA, and that was his vision and his guidance which he has shared with the industry stakeholder in the month of April about how MIA and government can help the space industry. And the discussion which was attended by our President, Dr. Subba Pavuluri, and we're looking for opportunity to have a discussion taken forward. And today is a day where we, under his leadership and guidance, Shri Prabhat Kumarji will interact with a few select industry leaders and how we can build up a go-to-market strategy. That's the space sector is right now is not able to achieve those kind of a policy strategy, but other sector has a much more privilege to use that. And this session is particularly talk about what is the go-to-market strategy, what is government policies are, and how industry can take advantage of that, how the other beneficial or Exim Bank, another strategy bank can help the Indian industry to grow and move forward and collaborate with foreign companies. So with this note, I'm really thankful to sir for your visiting and the galaxy of the panelists will take over. Thank you, sir. Please take it.
So shall I speak from here, from the dais? From the... Okay, so let me start from there. Thank you very much, Anandji and rest of the organizers for this very warm welcome. I'm really one area which India is proud of, and especially all of us who work with the Ministry of External Affairs, is the achievement of the space sector. And we are really proud of, and when we go abroad and when we speak to our interlocutors, we always bring this out, that what we have done. We are among the handful of countries who have done well in the space sector. So that is why when an interaction was organized of the industry with MEA, we came forward with many suggestions which will further enhance our ability and also our industry, especially when we are working abroad. So some of the issues which I discussed that day, I will try to encapsulate today also. How we can increase trade, how we can interact with other countries and enhance our presence in those countries. So what I will divide into two parts. One is the financing and other is exposure or trade arrangements that can be done. So financing, MEA has got a couple of ways of financing along with Exim Bank, as Mr. Prakash mentioned. One is lines of credit. The lines of credit are extended to countries. We have around 65 countries we have extended lines of credit by Exim Bank. This is a credit, government to government credit. Like we extend government, as a government, extend the credit to another government, and therefore it is a guaranteed credit, so that there is a sovereign guarantee from the other country. And we have done a number of projects all over the world, ranging from roads, railways, irrigation projects, buildings, you name it and probably we will be there. And some of them are iconic projects. Some of the buildings are well known. Some of the railway links are well known. Recently our External Affairs Minister was in Mozambique, and you might have seen that he was traveling in the railway built by Indian companies. We have built metro in Mauritius. So there are many projects. So in space sector also we can do the same thing. Here, of course, the thing is that there has to be, you have to make the country aware that this is what we can do, so that they are excited enough to ask for that credit. And therefore, the interaction with you is very important, so that you expose us and our people from Commerce Department or those officers who deal with commerce in the missions, that what are the areas in which we can deal and which we can bring our technology, our experience to them, and how it will benefit those countries. So these are lines of credit. It's generally large credit, say 100 million, 200 million, 300 million US dollars, sometimes 1 billion also. So these are large credits, which when we do huge infrastructure projects. But we also have something called grants, which we give to countries for small projects. Say that is without any, it's not a credit, it's a grant. So we give grants. Say we can do some small project in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, but also in Southeast Asia, some of the countries. And it can be $50,000, $100,000. So depending on the kind of project. So we also call it high impact community development project. So high impact community development project is if we do a project, say, in a town or in a village, and it will have, people will see and say that India has done it. So that kind of project. So even that can be done, and if there are, the project is good enough, it can be replicated in other countries. So these are grant basis projects. So this is the financing, but of course, as we promote India elsewhere, we also promote our technologies and our companies, and we can promote the companies in the space sector. I will request all the companies present here to share their knowledge and share their expertise with us, with our ambassadors, with our officers, so that they can go and speak to the companies abroad and to the country, to the leaders abroad, that these are the technologies that we can give you and how it will bring benefit to that country. So I'll stop here and probably come back during the discussions. Thank you. So, Mr. Laxmesh, can you come in and give us some idea on how we should work abroad?
Thank you very much, sir, for opening up of how the line of credit, grants, and the high-impact community development projects that you mentioned. I have a few thoughts on enhancing the international trade, especially when it comes to the space sector. There have been some very interesting examples where multiple countries have come together to set up projects which are of importance to the entire mankind. Say, for example, the ITER program or the ISS program or something like the 30-meter telescope programs, where countries are participating in kind. And for example, let's take some of these projects where a country's government participates in that program by supplying a portion of that project. And that portion is sourced from the industry within that particular country. So this is a very collaborative program where something of a pretty large nature can be in a very collaborative way established through multiple countries coming together. And the benefits of this project can be shared in the portion of their contribution. So this is one model which has been successful, especially for very complex programs, and I feel that something like getting to moon and getting to Mars and all are as complex, or if not more complex than the ones that are already there. The second thing which you actually mentioned about the line of credit, and we see that there are a lot of such things in the defense sector, where some of this is happening to the friendly countries. So I think that can be certainly extended in this space so that it creates this kind of trade. The third point which I thought I would is today there are certain restrictions, obviously because of dual nature of technologies, and therefore certain technologies are restricted for trading. May it be in terms of the launch vehicle in itself, or some of the payloads which can be of detrimental purposes. So now these become a vital and integral part of any space ecosystem, and therefore how do there be a trade on dual nature technology while ensuring that it doesn't really get into the dual part of it. So fundamentally, as India, we are also signatory to the MTCR. So therefore, I think now probably there will be an opportunity for even participating in launch vehicle and launching trade across the country, because I'm not very sure whether that fits into MTCR or whether MTCR can be kind of expanded to fit that. So probably you can have a look at that. Of course, today there is an opening for participation and trade in satellite and spacecrafts. So certainly that can be elaborated to getting into the what we call as the downstream, and that's where today there is enormous potential for international cooperation and international trade. So promoting that would also be very beneficial. So thank you. These were my views, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Prabhat Kumar, my colleagues on the dais, and distinguished audience. I would like to give a different version what Laxmesh has mentioned. In fact, first I would like to analyze what India can do for the rest of the world. What is India's experience of doing things in the space sector? When you look at it from this angle, I'm sure that everybody knows it. Of course, I would like to bring the notice of the Minister of External Affairs also the fact that the Indian space program from the very beginning has been supported by 500 industries nearly. These 500 industries together, it could be mechanical, or it can be electronics, it can be electrical, plastics, chemical, whatever, all these industries together gained enormous experience in space program. Therefore, this expertise can be used in building the satellites, in building the launch vehicles for the rest of the world. When you say, please don't think I'm overstating the fact, but the fact remains that India can do. This is how we must approach the entire problem. If you think that, we cannot do that, that kind of the slavery mentality, we should come out of that, that is over, that period is over, we can do it. Because already we built the satellites without the support from anybody. When we built the Bhaskara, Aryabhatta satellites, that was a time when we had no support from anybody. We learned from the textbooks and we did that. ISRO did that. And similarly, when we are talking about the moon mission, etc., there's no support from anybody else. We did that. And the moon mission, which is going to be Chandrayaan on 14th this month, that's going to be done entirely on our own. On the launch vehicle we built because starting from SLV-3 to ASLV to then PSLV to GSLV to today's SSLV. All have been built on our own in spite of the sanctions that came from abroad, from other countries, other so-called developed countries. So therefore, I request, this is on the platforms and the hardware part of it. When it comes to applications, India did a great job in the sense. I'll just narrate a couple of examples to you. We have mission project conducted in ISRO, which is called groundwater exploration for the entire country. There the idea was to find out the groundwater potential in the entire country, how they can drill the boreholes so that the water is made available for irrigation, drinking water, etc., that type of things into that. This was done not today, it was done about 20 years ago. Similarly, we identified the drought-prone areas and what can be done to create drought-proof for those regions. This was done exclusively, effectively has been done in the country. Similarly, forest mapping, forest monitoring, lot of other things. Just a few examples like this, very many examples are there on that. So this is what we can take it to the rest of the world. In the sense, suppose you take the problems that in the African region or many of the South American region, the problems are more or less similar in nature. So that can be, our experience can be taken to those countries. And we have enough of application scientists available in this country, you can go and work with them. At the same time, the number of startups that we have today in building the satellites are so many. And India can become the satellite manufacturing hub for the rest of the world. I just give another example to you, sir. With the FCC, the Federal Communications Center of USA, there are 2.4 lakh satellites have been registered This is the officially registered one. Of course, there could be many more also which are registered. Today, it is only India who can build such large number of satellites. Even if 20% business comes to India, that's a great business for us. That's where we request the Minister of External Affairs and hold with us and take us to the rest of the world. We can do wonders in that country. That's what I would like to tell you briefly on that part of it. We can elaborate further on that. Thank you, sir.
Excellent proposition about bringing 20% of the business, satellite launching business to India. So I think we all have to work on that. Regarding collaborative work, I think recently Prime Minister was in the United States and Honorable Prime Minister during that visit, we signed Artemis Agreement Accord, so which is also part of collaborative work that we are willing to do. We are doing in CERN, good of not in space sector, but of course it's I think particle accelerators, and of course ISTR is there. So this is a good idea, and we can work on it and find where collaboration can be done. Regarding MTCR, of course, once you have a project, let us know, because we have a division called Disarmament and Security Division, which all this dual-use technology, we see and go through it and see if we can approve those. So if you have a project, let us know. So I think whenever there is a project, yeah. So, can you, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. If you look at the global exports in space which India is doing today, in PwC we did a back of the envelope, we are about $400 million of exports in space sector. We see in the next 10 years this potential to grow to about $10 billion by 2033 or 2034. I will just address this in two parts now. What are the challenges of achieving this $10 billion exports? And Dr. Subba spoke about India being a satellite manufacturing hub as one of the options. And what are our capabilities within the countries to achieve certain goals? So I think, let me address the capabilities first. And I think we have a very strong anchor in ISRO, the new Space Policy 2023, which allows transfer of technology from ISRO, which is matured and operationalized, to the industry, which includes both private and the public sector. This really sets the stage for creating a strong upstream business. And obviously, the upstream value chain, we are addressing both satellite manufacturing and launch vehicle manufacturing. So I completely agree with Dr. Subba proposition. India can be a satellite manufacturing hub. And to that extent, there are steps being made. Tuticorin, the Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corridor, is looking at creating a spaceport there. India can also be a hub for launch vehicle manufacturing. In the midstream segment, where we are looking at the ground segment, especially in Earth observation, India can again take lead, because this is an area where we have the capability. Downstream is one area where I must say that India can strive to take global leadership, because downstream is all about application services, big data analytics, AI/ML, and these are the areas where the capability in the country in terms of IT, electronics, is we can build our synergies to take leadership in the downstream, especially in Earth observation. Here I would also like to mention the Navik constellation of 8 satellites. If we do expand this, in the equatorial region, this is the best, I would say, navigation constellation. It is better than GPS or GLONASS, which are more suited for temperate and polar regions. So we have huge potential in Earth observation, in navigation. Coming to the communication side and the downstream, I think the flavor of the day is LEO constellation for SATCOM broadband, and that's something which we'll have to see whether we, as a country, we should invest or not, but that's an option lying on the table. Now coming to the challenges, we see 3 major challenges for India to increasing its global exports, its trade. And these are R&D, technology, number one, second, skilling, training, and third is the funding. How do you mitigate these three challenges? And that's what the chair you mentioned. Artemis Accord is a step in the right direction because it brings in collaboration. We need to get into bilaterals. Line of credit is one way, grants is another. How do we look at addressing these challenges through more technology cooperation, to more co-development? I spoke at the G20 seminar in Shillong at the Space Economic Leaders Meet, and in that meet we addressed it, how can countries, G20 countries, come together in addressing these three major challenges? And I think this is where we can create synergy, because at the end of the day, space is global commons, and any investment in space would bring in changes across the globe. The last point I want to make is, I think India is a peninsular country. We overlook the Indian Ocean region. Our satellites, geostationary satellites and MEO satellites, even the LEO which are rotating, cover the area of Indo-Pacific, the Indian Ocean region. This is an area which is starting from east coast of Africa down till the west coast of United States and California, where most of our satellites have an imprint. How can we influence this area for the betterment of the citizens living here? And I think if we develop that soft power, our trade will improve. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Captain Vishal. A very good idea of NAVIC satellites, through the equatorial countries. So probably the way forward will be identify those countries which you think will participate in this. And then MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, can start speaking to those countries. So I think Chaitanya is doing some work in this regard. And of course, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, everyone, and sorry for being missing in the panel since the beginning. So as Sir mentioned, we are doing a project where the task is to identify a long list of countries with whom India can partner in the long run. And when I say in the long run, on a time span around 10 to 20 years. The idea of this project is that we identify 50-odd countries, and then we start scoring them based on a variety of factors. Now, these factors range from geopolitical, technopolitical, whether we have enough embellishment and cushioning for our companies when they go there, because we don't want these companies to go there and be in the dark. There needs to be enough mechanisms to cocoon them and protect them if anything goes wrong. And if everything falls in place, all the factors should work in their favors so that they make outwardly investments in a secure manner. Apart from that, we identify countries based on what kind of multilaterals we share with them. So, for instance, there are countries, most of the spacefaring countries are part of the G20. But outside that, it is BRICS. You have Quad, you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then you have your partnerships with ASEAN, then you have your partnerships with along the trade corridors, especially along the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor, the India-Africa Opportunity Corridor, the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor as we call it, then the I2U2, the India, Israel, UAE and US, which has come up very recently after the culmination of the Abraham Accords. So there are quite a few opportunities that we need to look into. Apart from that, if I talk about the dynamics in terms of astropolitical blocks that have been created, yes, for sure, we have been invited into the Artemis Accords, we have signed it. But then, does that mean we have taken stances and does that mean we have taken sides? I don't think so. We are signatory in spirit of the document in what it stands for. Does Artemis bind, is it binding on countries to be aligned with the lead country in terms of a bloc? No, it is not so. We've seen that in two examples. Look at the case of United Arab Emirates. They're signatories to the Artemis Accords, yet at the same time you find them working with the Chinese. The next lunar mission of UAE will be piggybacking on a Chinese spacecraft. That is one example. You talk to the French. The French will tell you that, yes, we have definitely signed the Artemis Accords, but we are not going to let go strategic autonomy, because their ability to partner with whichever country they want to or whichever group they want to need not be compromised. So there are quite a few nitty-gritties. Things are not exactly black and white. There's a lot happening in the gray zone. And if you talk about the Indian space ecosystem, I'll finish by identifying the SWOT, the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats of our ecosystem. And I'll succinctly put it in this manner. Regarding the strength, one of our biggest strengths is that we have a proclivity for indigenization. We have a penchant for it. We have done it, and our space program is the greatest example of it. The next big strength, which is quite evident in the crowd here, we have a large talent pool and industrial base for a comprehensive ecosystem build-out. We have it in us. Then a massive domestic consumer base that gives fillip to not only just our companies, but all the companies that are wanting to invest in India. The consumer base is massive. Our space products are competitive in the global south. We have placed ourselves as the voice of the global south, and that means is that some of the technologies that we build over here are built in such a rugged manner that it not only works in our terrain, in our states, in our hinterlands, but let's say in the hinterlands of Latin America or in Africa. The cost propositions are along the same lines. Big conglomerates, L&T is over here, Ananth is over here. We are ready to work on cutting-edge projects. L&T is already in talks on some of the projects. We have already heard in the past, since yesterday. We'll get to know from Laxmesh in the coming times. Now, coming to the weaknesses, we need to acknowledge them and we need to address them immediately. Weaknesses, my startups will agree with me, there's a lack of domestic investment beyond Series A. Series A ke beyond, we have to look at overseas partners for money. That's one of the weaknesses. We have to somehow manage capital in a way that we go beyond Series A. In the mature stages of the technology. It shouldn't be that you are rearing a startup in the early stages and then fir wo paraye ho gaye. It shouldn't happen that way. That is a weakness. Most of our space ecosystem is right now lingering, and our mission design is still in the space 1.0 era. We have to mature fast. That's one of the weaknesses. In a comprehensive manner, our gross investments or expenditure on R&D, not only in space but across the portfolio, is still low. That needs to grow. We are roughly investing around 0.8% of our GDP. That should surpass 1.5%. You ask to any scientist like me, they'll crib all the time about that. That is one. Complete R&D cycle. We are still unable to complete in many sectors. Especially, I'll talk about 3 kinds of commodities. They fall into category HSN 88, HSN 90, and HSN 99. Look into these harmonic codes. These are spacecraft and aircraft products. These are precision instruments, and these are high-end digital services, including geospatial services. Unfortunately, 95% of our exports, 95% of the instruments that we use, they are imports. That needs to change. And I believe payloads are a sure-shot way of developing precision instruments in India. And these instruments can not only be used for space purposes, but also for earthly applications of various kinds. On the opportunities, I'll quickly finish this. At present, our current geopolitical position is that of strength. We are very well placed. We do not need to hear anybody's diktats. We can assertively put across our word, our thoughts, and it will be taken up. So that's a very good opportunity for us right now. There is an exponential growth happening in the digital economy sector, and we should piggyback, we should sit on its back and sort of develop the space economy. So space economy will then become a sort of a byproduct or a contemporary product of digital economy. We have a motivated and skilled talent pool, not only residing here, but those who are getting skilled elsewhere. They can come back if you provide the right set of opportunities. That's an opportunity. There's one controversial statement I don't want to make, but we can talk in the sidelines, and that is a captive market. I'll just leave it there. There's a captive market existing for us elsewhere. And look at all the geoeconomic projections, right from World Bank, IMF, everybody is positive about India. And when they are so positive about India, you are sure shot attracting investments. Make sure that is bang for the buck for all the investors. Now, coming quickly to the threats, with our competitors, our technology gap is massive. We need to bridge that gap. Our ecosystem is still disorganized. Entities like SIA are taking painstaking efforts to bring them together, have such colloquiums, have papers, white papers out, and we are sort of, putting the house in order. Our startups should not get bought out. Our startups should reside here, and our startups should find their glory in this country. They shouldn't go anywhere else just for the sake of money. Make sure that they are getting the money. That is one. We need to have a long-term space strategy. Get out of space 1.0 mentality, get into the space 2.0 mentality quickly, and get the defense space program activated as soon as possible, because you need a second mother to the space program. ISRO can't be the only mother for the space program. I'll end over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chaitanyagiri. That was a very good SWOT analysis of what can be done and where we are strong and where we are weak. You mentioned Voice of Global South. So one of the things as India's, what India has been speaking about is taking the voice of Global South, and our Prime Minister has been stressing on that, and especially during the G20, our chairmanship, this is one area we are working on. So Voice of Global South also means that whatever we develop, whatever we are good in, we take those out to the world. So be it UPI, be it our COVID, or digital technologies, or even, Gati Shakti, all this we are trying to take it abroad, take it to the countries which, our countries which belong to the Global South, whom we work very closely. So in that context, I will request Mr. Rahul Verma to say if MapmyIndia can be taken abroad. And yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. And actually, you said exactly what I wanted to communicate. So it's a privilege to be in front of you and this audience. Thanks to SIA for giving me the opportunity. I'm Rohan Verma. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of MapmyIndia. And sir, just to preface the point, I'll exactly talk about Map My Nation. That's the thing that we can take to the world, the same way that you are talking about digital public infrastructure being taken by MEA. It gives us soft power. It's we are the right country to give technology to the rest of the world, because we neither dominate nor dictate, but we enable. That's what the way Honorable Prime Minister mentions about India's role for both the Global South as well as for the developed world. And the approach we are also talking about is, how can we, the way what we've done with MapmyIndia, can we enable every country to be Atmanirbhar, to be capable with this concept of Map My Nation? So, but what is Map My Nation? What will it mean for any country is what I kind of want to explain. We're a 28-year-old company which started with this vision that someday 80% of all data would have a location component to it, and that digital maps and location-based technology can have infinite applications. So back in 95, of course, people called my parents crazy, that what are you talking and why would you build digital maps? But now, of course, we know how important it is in all of our lives. And so we went about building the digital map data of the entire country, essentially mapping our India. And in the last couple of years, we've seen an upswell of support, especially from the government, to liberalize and unlock the value of geospatial. And as a result, we could publicly list. We're a profitable company, growing company, and we became a geospatial unicorn. Here in India, through the public markets, Indian ownership, and very much an indigenous company. Focused on building data, that's what maps, our geospatial data, focused on software and increasingly hardware, both from a design and manufacturing perspective. And we are proud to say that CoWIN, ULIP of Gati Shakti, ONDC are all powered by MapmyIndia as well. We are the map and location component in that digital public infrastructure. Now, what we will do as MapmyNation is enable any country, developed or developing, especially developing, to have the following kind of 7 capabilities. I call it MINDAGs. M for mapping, I for IoT, N for navigation, D for drones, A for analytics or AI, G for geospatial solutions, and S for satellites. Really, the idea is to enable every country to have their own MINDAGs stack, which we call MapmyNation. Now, maps is the core soft infrastructure we can enable any country to have, their geospatial data infrastructure. Just the way we are helping them build bridges or stadiums or airports or railway stations or ports, we can help them map their country. And MapmyIndia has that capability. We have the playbook, the process, the technology, and the know-how to help them do that. IoT, what I mean by that is NAVIC or GPS, satellite-based IoT devices, a great application for telematics, fleet management, logistics, but also for connected vehicles. Navigation, of course, none of us can get from A to B without navigation. And so really we will enable them to have this navigation solutions which are used for personal or commercial use. And then drones. I know we're in a space conference, but drones are also one way of collecting data, geospatial data. And so all of these multi-sourced data can be geospatially analyzed. And drones, India is doing a great job. MapmyIndia itself is in the drones business. So we see that as something that's part of the MapmyNation MINDAG stack. Analytics and AI. Of course, kind of our country is capable. And MapmyIndia has a very strong geospatial analytics and computer vision, AI ML-based platform where people don't need to use kind of foreign solutions, which people know about in the West, but India has its own technology, which is an enabler. And finally, of course, is geospatial solutions. Downstream, MapmyIndia is all about applications and use cases, whether in the government or in the automotive sector, corporate world, or for consumers. MapmyIndia has a full range. In fact, if you use the Mappls consumer app, I promise you won't have to use Google Maps. I mean, I know it's a bold statement, but if you ask the few million users who have MapmyIndia's app, they will tell you that just because we don't come preloaded on Android phones because of this monopoly, people don't know us that much. But if anybody who downloads uses it, and this Mappls app for every country can be called their MapMy Nepal, MapMy Bhutan, something like that. And finally, on the upstream part, I mean, MapmyIndia is super excited to be now backing Earth observation satellites. And we've partnered with a great startup called Capt Space, focused on multi-sensor, optical plus SAR, and potentially other sensors in future, satellites so you can see anytime, any weather, anywhere, and capture that on a taskable basis. And it's with an ex-ISRO scientist for 20 years. We believe that the expertise and experience is the one thing that will drive deep tech, world competitive products and platforms. And so with satellites that we can actually give, either as a sovereign satellite to those governments or as data or data analytics, that's really the satellite play. So if there's only 2 things I can leave you with, one is kind of MINDAGs is what we should be, my suggestion or request is MEA and Government of India can really do something special by making every country Atmanirbhar. When the geospatial industry was liberalized, The quote from the Honorable Minister of State was that by 2030, India would be a 1 lakh crore geospatial economy. So for every country, this can be big. And so MINDAGs and MapmyNation, that's my value proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verma. I think it was a very nice exposition, and probably we have to work together and see how we can take this abroad, especially to our neighboring countries. They will be interested, and we are always working with them very closely. So probably a good idea. Next, I will request Mr. Anagh Singh from Invest India. Of course, one thing that came about is that after Series A, there is a lack of investor interest. So probably, how do we bring about investor interest in such an exciting sector?
Good evening, sir. Good evening to everyone on the dais. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I come in from an agency called Invest India, which is the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency. And also we drive some of the Government of India's most marquee programs, which include Startup India, the Agni Mission, which comes under the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, the Project Monitoring Room of the Capt, and so on and so forth. I actually work with the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, leading his defense and cyber warfare team, including now looking at strategic spaces, which includes the space sector. Another area of what brings my credibility to speak here is that I'm leading the efforts in terms of building the national deep tech policy. There has been a lot of talk about deep tech, and the second revolution after e-commerce and B2B will be coming in from deep tech, and that is where we engage with the space sector. I was also in charge of actually formulating the first framework of how technology commercialization from ISRO should take place. I just have a simple question, and I'm sure most of you would have the answer, is that what made Silicon Valley Silicon Valley? There were two things. One was a very flourishing venture capital ecosystem, and a second was a very deep-rooted technology commercialization program of the government of the United States. Probably the third would be also something that we have always criticized the government about, is that it lacks the long-term perspective plan. So those are the three things that we are looking at in terms of improving inside the government. There were issues that were raised about financing. Now, financing deep tech is a very challenging, it's a global problem. Financing space sector is also a global problem. Today, as a matter of fact, India just holds about 2% of the global space ecosystem. And given our ambitions of being a $10 trillion economy, we are ambitious and hopeful with the support of the various sectors, which include space, that space will play a very big program, a very big role in a program in this. The fact of the matter remains that ultimately, the creation of that ecosystem is very, very vital. How does that come about? That is something that is still deliberated and is still being deliberated. I think this is one of the perfect platforms to deliberate on those ideas, on how cross-functional applications and also ecosystem partnerships can be developed. That is something that is very crucial. Now, if you look at the Silicon Valley, you look at Israel, the civil society and the government work in parallel. I think that amount of trust needs to be reposed in each other to actually make things much bigger and scaled up much faster. Now, when we look at startups, startups always, there's a chicken and egg problem. The government says, show me the technology says, show me the money. Now, how do you break this chicken and egg problem? One of the suggestions that we've had from the government, or rather sitting inside the government and to the government, is that there has to be a stage gate approach towards procurement. And that's how things are going to be developed. Like if you look at the United States, it has, the SBIR, STTR programs, which are enabling such an ecosystem where technologies required and the capacity and capability required 15 to 20 years down the line is being developed. Those are some things that the government of India has actually thought about. It is time that, that information asymmetry between the various players is bridged. And I hope, the efforts that Invest India is putting towards that and all of you are putting towards that actually creates an ecosystem where space is a very critical sector, a vital sector, and it's more vibrant. So I'll leave my thoughts at that, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Now I request Captain Narasimhamurthy to, of course, probably sum up what happened, some of the discussions today, and give his own thoughts on how to move forward in this sector. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good evening, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem with being the last person to speak is I think I nearly trashed everything I'd written and then I'm not sure what to speak about. But having said that, I will revert back to what I've done in life as a project manager for one of the most important projects that I've been part of, and that was Gagan, which was GPS-aided geo-augmented navigation. Now, the reason why I bring it up is to give you a sense of how we adopted, right? And this was specifically in the aviation sector. The satellites were launched, the ground stations were up and running, technology was proven. We didn't adopt it. And this we are talking about homegrown. So the August gathering here on the dais has spoken about our technological prowess. That is unquestionable, but there is an element of advocacy, there's an element of movement in that inertia which needs to come in, and that is where I was a part of. Now, our own industry, having seen the technical capabilities, decided that they need a business case to be able to adopt it. Of course, I'm speaking from a very specific value proposition and use case, which was for the aviation industry. The aviation industry was always, at that point in time, it was reeling because of the kind of cost values that were there. And therefore, they came up with a reason to say that you need to show us the business case. And Gagan is available to all of us to adopt, right? But still, they said they needed a business case to be able to adopt it. Now, this business case, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to share with you something which is something that I feel personally about. Was funded by an industry body from another country. And this is what I submit to you. While this grant was given, we had to prove the business case using data from our own aviation companies, aviation operators. We had to prove the business case and build a narrative to say that this makes sense, not just for the nation, but for the industry as a whole. Now, this is what I'd like to submit to all of you to say that, and the August chair spoke about this point that funding is available and so on and so forth, right? I'm here to submit to you that we need to identify programs, and this is at a national scale. The likes of Gagan. At the end of this program, we had identified 11 value pools that were available to us to implement. We had identified a sizable set of countries that had expressed an intent, at least initial intent, to be a part of the program. Now, this needs to be moved forward. We need to identify the program. We need to build a go-to-market and a business case. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not think it is merely application of money or application of technology. It is about moving the needle in terms of being able to build value cases for these nations and for them to adopt what we have seen. So what I'm saying is, let us identify the programs, let us build those business cases and tailor-made business cases, and then that is a means to realize value for our own companies, for our own industry. And that's what I want to submit to you. The second point, and my last point is this. The other project that I was a part of, which is the AIT of PSLV, which I feel is a watershed movement. Such initiatives, once again, need to be identified and move forward in our own country. There's a consortium that's already been identified, and they've got the mandate to do these kinds of take up these kinds of projects. I believe that it's high time that we moved these projects along and brought on board private sector. I'm already here to tell you that private sector has already been brought on board in certain cases, but we need to move the needle on this to be able to afford an opportunity for our startups, our private industry, to be able to go and showcase this kind of capability globally and then realize the value. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain. This is a business case. So we all have to make a business case. I think we are at the end of the program, but sir, we have some question and answers? From the, yeah? Yeah. So it's open for question and answers. Yeah. Kindly identify yourself then probably. Yeah.
At the outset, I would like to compliment Dr. Subba for creating such a great assembly of people and SIA. In this panel, a lot of things have been discussed. But, I am SD Saxena. I belong to the telecom sector. I worked for 40 years. And the first ground segment which was built up in India, INSAT 1, was done by us. I was a part of the team. I was also a member, founding member of C-DOT, etc. Now, one thing which I would like, I have been emphasizing all the time, R&D, space sector, chipsets, semiconductor technology, all these cannot be built unless the government start deploying huge resources into these sectors. And the private sector, because the profitability, if you work out the Excel sheets, the returns are so poor that not many companies come up. And I would like to give you a fact which is very interesting. When I studied Elon Musk and SpaceX, the huge amount of billions of dollars have been put in by the US government into their projects. Therefore, we should also build up a debate in the country that if you do not invest into some of these startups and on a long-term basis, it will not succeed. That is one point, and I think this is a comment. And the question is that in the R&D also, we talk a lot about R&D and a lot of stories are built up, but ultimately there are no audits and there are no mechanism of peer audits into these research. We put in money, but then small money is put in. The money which should go into a big way into some of the projects are not happening. Will that be possible? I would like to ask this question. Thank you very much.
See, R&D investments are pretty critical, and the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister, where I work, we look at it very closely in terms of monitoring it. It's just a small piece in the larger puzzle. However, R&D, there's no two doubts as far as innovation is concerned, invention is concerned, progress is concerned, and economic vitality of the nation is concerned. R&D investments are very, very crucial, and we are still lagging behind, just about 0.8, 0.9% of our GDP. However, the essence, lies in the fact that ultimately, how can you enable user-centric research? That is the ultimate goal. The private sector does not know the kind of capabilities that the government requires. I've been working with the BSF, I've been working with the Indian Army on multiple projects where those capabilities in India are just not there. Now, how do we develop that? That is, probably there's information asymmetry, which I can give it. And then the kind of stuff that is being built that does not, ultimately it has to be broken. The users require, if I have to put an analogy, a Mercedes-Benz, but what's on offer is a Maruti Ciaz. How do you get a Ciaz to a Mercedes-Benz? That's the question that the nation needs to answer. So the point is that ultimately you need to talk. How does that get enabled? That is something that we've tried to find an answer at Invest India in terms of bringing people together and solving those critical challenges that are there via private sector participation, whether it's R&D or whether it's otherwise as well. So that's something that's work in progress.
I'd like to supplement Anagh's point and his point. When we are talking of R&D, there has to be something which is called a collaborative R&D. So the user tells what they want a Mercedes. You know that the capacity is to build a rickshaw. And then we want make in India or a fake in India. So I am very blunt, sir, that the startups do not have all the infrastructure to start with 50% make in India, number one. Number two, there is no collaborative research that rather than building a complete Mercedes, I could just focus on the steering wheel. That's my take. Thank you very much for the Ministry of External Affairs. I am from Jugapro. We are in high security business, and we have done a project for Ministry of External Affairs in Mauritius at the Aglega Island. Thank you very much.
One supplementary, if you allow me, Doctor. Thank you. Yeah. Actually, I studied Bell Labs quite a bit. One of my friends was a great star in Bell Lab. He was doing carbon dioxide lasers. And I would request all of you to study that book called The Idea Factory. When you do research, you don't look at simple, you throw money. The money is thrown like, a river is flowing. And when you throw money into I'm very lucky that Dr. Ananth Singh is here, and I would like you to leave with that thought. The more money you throw, out of 100 projects, if 2 projects pay back, then you have done everything. That's what happened in Silicon Valley, where venture capitalists are throwing money, and out of 10 projects, if 1 gives money in return, you pair off. But the society moves on. The best example which I give is that of transistors. The transistor was invented in a corridor in Bell Lab, in a corridor next to the toilet. But that is where perhaps the whole world got changed. Today we must thank John Bardeen and his team who invented transistors in a corridor. Therefore, I would still say that the deployment into the projects, space research and semiconductors and all of that has to be multiplied at least 10 times. I am begging you, sir, to do that, since you are very powerful. Thank you.
I just want to make one more point on R&D since we are discussing space. So I think the new space policy 2023, if most of you would read that, the testing infrastructure today which is available with ISRO, as per the space policy, will be provided to the industry, to the private industry. And it is in space which will decide whether, say, a private company A gets priority for that or ISRO get. And that's a huge shift what this policy has done. So government is actually opening up the testing infrastructure of R&D. That's number one. Number two, I spoke about it also, that every technology or system or subsystem which ISRO is developing, the moment it becomes operational and matured, again this policy says there has been a transfer of technology to the industry. And I think that's an excellent move. That means if a small satellite launch vehicle, SSLV, you must have heard, it was operationalized about a few weeks back, that transfer of technology will take place to the ecosystem, to the private or the public sector. So therefore, these 2 steps are towards facilitating R&D in the private ecosystem. Now, the challenge is, what will excite the private sector to invest in R&D? And what, Professor Giri spoke about, it is a fact that the investments in R&D from the private ecosystem in India is very laggard. And towards that, we need to think what will take. One of the things which comes to mind is creating a market-driven R&D strategy for the space ecosystem for the country in the next 10 years, where you have a demand visibility for investors to come in, and so that money flows into the R&D. So there are steps, essentially, I want to say the government is taking. There are brilliant steps in this policy, and there are some new steps for challenges of being faced with the private ecosystem, but I think we can transcend them.
Thank you. So I think we will close here, but some closing remarks and probably. So I think government is aware of the funding gaps. That's why National Research Fund has been launched. Also the PLI, is there for so many sectors, and as was said that the business case has to be made for PLI in the space sector, so that the government is made aware. So it is up to you, to the industry, to make a business case for PLI in space sector and go to DPIIT for that. So the topic was, of course, we little divert, but of course everything is relevant. A little diversion was there. A topic was how to take it abroad and have better trade and commerce in this area. And as I said, MEA is open. You can come to me. Mr. Singhvi has not come, but he's also there. But all of us are working here and in our missions abroad to take our industry to the countries where we are working. So please come forward come to us with your projects, with your projections, with the countries which we want to work. And there are many ways apart from the lines of credit and grants I mentioned earlier, but also you can approach CII, FICCI, and others whom we work with, and they take delegations abroad, so you can become part of those delegations. Even Prime Minister's, delegations, or our minister going abroad, so External Affairs Minister. So depending on, what we can take, and if there is a demand for those sectors, especially in the space sector, what ideas can come forward. So those ideas you can communicate to us through various means, and we will be happy. As I said, we are really proud of our space sector. So we will be happy to work with you and to expose India's space sector to the countries, to our friendly countries, and that way help in your growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our speakers for that elaborate discussion on enhancing India's global trade in space sector, touching upon the current status, the challenges on the way, and how the various stakeholders can play a role in that. Special thanks to Prabhat sir for steering this important discussion. Can we please have a round of applause for all our speakers? Thank you. So it has been an information-intense day, if I may say so, starting with an energizing address in the morning by His Excellency, the Governor of Uttarakhand. We talked about space debris, international efforts towards its mitigation, women in space, satellites for SDGs, industrialization of India's space capabilities, innovation in spacecraft design, fintech, insurance, and many more topics. So a lot of intellectual stimulation to go back with. Tomorrow we begin the third and final day of the India Space Congress at 9 in the morning. His Excellency, the Governor of Mizoram, would be gracing us tomorrow morning, and many more interesting sessions await ahead. Thank you for staying with us through the day too, and I hope to see you all tomorrow morning. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you. So can we request you for a picture?